In the winter of 1912, deep in the folded hills of the Missouri Ozarks, there stood a farmhouse, half hidden by pine and oak, stitched into the land like a scar beneath snow. This place was not marked on most maps. It didn't need to be. The land remembered it, whether people did or not. Inside that house lived a woman named Eliza Whitlock, a wife, a mother, the keeper of hearth and field. And one morning, she vanished. No footprints, no broken door, no sign of struggle, only a flickering oil lamp, and a meal left cooling on the table. What followed wasn't just an investigation, it was a descent into silence, into folklore, into something far older than explanation. This is the story of Eliza Whitlock, or at least what remains of it. To understand Eliza's disappearance, we begin with the land. The Ozarks in 1912 were a world of isolation. Cold creeks sliced through frostbitten hollows. Smoke curled thinly from chimney stacks, dissolving into a sky already dim by late afternoon. Freight moved slow, rail if you were lucky, mule cart if you weren't, and luck was rare. Eliza's house stood near the edge of a bramble-choked ridge. Old timber, weather-stained, shingles patched with tin, the kind of house that creaked even when still. The nearest neighbor lived nearly a mile off. You might hear the church bell on Sunday, but by Tuesday, the wind and the trees were the only language left. Inside, modest rooms, a hearth, a single oil lamp, a children's room with a bed, and a crib. Outside, a barn, a smokehouse, and a field slowly surrendering to the wild. It is not just the distance that matters here, it's the silence. A silence wide enough for someone to disappear into it. Eliza Whitlock was born sometime in the 1880s. Records from that era don't agree. She came from a farm family, the kind that knew equal parts hunger and harvest. She married John Whitlock, moved into the Ridge house, had 2 children, and from all accounts, settled into the rhythm of rural life. Letters to her sister mention storms shaking the windows, the ache of cold evenings, a cough she hoped wouldn't stay till spring. But among the routine, one note stood out. "I don't like what I saw out there," she said to her neighbor once, pointing toward the West Ridge. She didn't say what she saw, only that she didn't like it. By February 1912, the nights were growing long, and Eliza had already begun to listen too closely to the woods. It was a Tuesday, February 13th. John Whitlock rose early. Around 6:30, he stoked the stove, took the milk pail, shoveled the walk. The house was quiet, the children still asleep. He noticed the kettle was half filled. Porridge sat cooling. A chair at the table was turned slightly out. He called for Eliza. No answer. He checked the barn, the smokehouse, the path to the spring. The snow should have told him where she went, but it didn't. No footprints, not even hers. By noon, he fired a rifle into the air, a call for help the old way. Neighbors arrived. Mrs. Turner, the mail carrier. They searched. They called her name, but the snow was already falling again. The county sheriff arrived that afternoon. He asked the usual questions. Was she upset? Had anyone visited? Any fights? Any sightings? John said Eliza had been quiet, thinking on things I didn't quite understand, he said. The search expanded. Ridge, woods, smokehouse, spring. One tracker thought he saw a drag mark by the smokehouse, a smear of fabric. It ended in brambles. They dismissed it. Animals, they said. By nightfall, the story reached town. The paper ran a small notice. Mrs. Eliza Whitlock of Ridge Hollow, Missouri, has been missing since Tuesday morning. But behind that brief line, something darker gathered. There were no broken windows, no signs of forced entry. The front door was latched from inside. Her coat still hung by the door. Her boots were dry. Inside the smokehouse, a single dark smear on the floor. Blood? Animal fat? No one could say, but someone cleaned it anyway. The stove was still warm. The last trace of Eliza was heat. By Thursday, The theories began. Maybe she left on purpose, but she took nothing. Maybe an accident, but no fall, no trail, no body. Maybe something else. Neighbors recalled seeing lights in the woods the night before, a lantern on the ridge. Mrs. Turner said she heard something like wind, but different, lower. And there were the old stories, saying, about the hollows, about things in the trees. She didn't like what she saw out there. Now others began to wonder what she meant. Eliza didn't just marry into a home, she married into a history. The Whitlock family had been part of the Ozarks since the 1860s, settlers from the Carolinas, carving out land on the ridge. They weren't rich, weren't prominent, just known. Known for being quiet, known for keeping to themselves, known, in some corners, for something else entirely. In 1895, a man named Reverend Ezra Whitlock, likely John's uncle, was dismissed from his ministry. The reason is written in church records, practices inconsistent with doctrine. Unwholesome gatherings on the Whitlock land involving candles, unknown words, and chants in the hollow. It was never officially followed up. No charges, no accusations, just silence. But that silence was heavy. In a place like Ridge Hollow, absence is never empty. And by the time Eliza disappeared, the land already carried a reputation, not spoken loudly, only in glances, only in warnings. 6 days after Eliza vanished, during a second search of the house, someone found a small tin in the pantry wall. February 3. Cold worsening. James fevered. Boiled willow bark. February 10. Owl on ridge. Same place as last week. But toward the back, the tone fractures. The woods are wrong at night. There is a rhythm I don't know. The trees lean against the sky as if listening. I hear my name in the wind sometimes. Not a voice, just the shape of it. The boy talks in his sleep again. Same phrase. He's under the root. The door was open again this morning. I had latched it, nothing taken, but I feel something knows the inside of our house. The sheriff called it melancholy. They saw warning. By the second week, new accounts began to emerge. They weren't consistent. They didn't align, but taken together, they formed a pattern. Tobias Crane, a local trapper, claimed he saw a woman in white near the bramble path, said she wasn't walking, said she was floating. Henry Morton heard screams 2 nights after the disappearance, far away, or maybe deep below. And then there was Sarah Kettler, 8 years old. She told her mother, "The barefoot lady was at my window last night. Her eyes were too big. They went back too far." When asked to draw the face, Sarah refused. She didn't have one, the girl said. Just the eyes. Just the black. The sheriff dismissed them all, called them grief hallucinations, but the timeline didn't let go. Because if someone heard Eliza's voice days after she vanished, then she didn't vanish at all. She lingered. February 19th, a new search was called. The spring, about 300 yards downhill. The water there never froze. Locals called it the breathing spring. The men lowered a torch in on a rope. It went dark. But when they pulled it back, it was still warm. They called it nothing. Illusion. Trick of the eye. 2 days later, Silas Groves, one of the men who searched the spring, vanished on his walk home. His trail stopped mid-stride. His dog returned, shaking, silent. No one called it connected. But it was. As weeks turned to months, the stories began to surface. Not new ones, old ones, very old. Of a woman who walks through fog asking, "Do you remember me?" Of a cave sealed shut because it breathed in its sleep. Of a hollow that sings, but only when no one is listening. The root man lives beneath the ridge. If you answer him when he calls, he keeps your name. In isolation, these are campfire stories. But now, the pattern was undeniable. Whatever had taken Eliza had roots. In March, the snows had begun to melt. That's when the note appeared, pinned to the back door of the church. I did not leave. He opened the hill. "I am underneath." The handwriting was elegant, neat, but not hers. The sheriff called it a prank, a cruel one. But a linguist from St. Louis examined it, said it was written in iron gall ink, not fountain, not modern. From that point forward, no more searches were organized. No more volunteers came forward. The land had spoken. John Whitlock remained in the house until April. Neighbors said he stopped answering the door, was seen once, hammering the barn doors shut. To keep her voice out, he said. One morning, he was gone. The children were taken by his sister. No one ever lived in the house again. Some say it burned in the 1970s. Others say it just collapsed. But no one rebuilt. No one even marked the land. Because no one wanted to ask if she was still there. After 1912, the case faded from official memory. The sheriff died in 1929. The Ridge Hollow land was never sold, never listed again. The paper stopped running her name. But memory doesn't vanish. 1943, woman at Bridge said she saw Eliza by the spring, told her he doesn't sleep anymore. 1949, stranger asked for the hollow that sings, disappeared next day. These were never verified, never investigated. But they weren't forgotten either, because Eliza had become something else. Not a person, not a story, but a presence. In 1956, retired musicologist Dr. Henry Vail visited the Ozarks to collect folk ballads from the Ridge Hollow region. During an interview with an aging fiddler, he was handed a box. "Things from the old Whitlock house," the man said. Among them, fragments of china, rusted tools, and a wax phonograph cylinder. Vail expected music. What he heard was something else entirely. He archived it, labeled it only. Field anomaly, unclassified. The university library that housed the original burned in 1961. Only Vail's notes remain. The cylinder, like Eliza, vanished. The wax cylinder spurred renewed interest. In 1957, Carter County authorized the unsealing of all surviving Whitlock documents. Many were missing, others damaged, but a few were stranger than expected. The entire page for the day of Eliza's disappearance gone. To the county authority, "I warn you of ritual behaviors on the Whitlock property. Candles, chants, a boy repeating backwards words. No signature, no follow-up." But what came next was the strangest find of all. Night 3, knocking on porch. No one there. 3 dead birds in a circle. Night 5, child's voice in wind. Said, "Mama's under the leaves, no child nearby." The final page was torn out. It was never recovered. By the 1960s, the Whitlock story had resurfaced, not as a cold case, but as cultural phenomenon. The Whitlock case is not an event. It is a local articulation of the deep disappearance, the moment when land remembers differently than people do. Pastor Jonah Clevens, Sermon, 1968. She is not lost. She is beneath the skin of the ridge. She speaks still. Do not listen. That same year, 3 teenagers explored near the spring, claimed to see a woman standing in a shaft of moonlight. When approached, she vanished. One of them returned mute. The others never spoke of it again. In 1972, Missouri State University authorized an archaeological survey of the suspected Whitlock house site. The dig team found structural debris, wood scorched, metal fused, 2 iron keys melted together, bone fragments, partial, human and animal, intermingled. Beneath the ruins, they discovered a chamber, stone walls, cold air, a root system twisted unnaturally into a spiral, as if shaped by something conscious. I did not knock. He opened. Carbon dated to 1910. It was no longer just one disappearance. It was echoes, feedback loops. Some researchers proposed a disturbing theory. This is not an isolated event. This is a site-specific phenomenon. The land is aware. It selects. In 1981, a locked trunk was found during an estate sale. Inside, a letter. Signed, John Whitlock. I have not seen her since the morning she vanished, but I hear her every night. In the stove's ash, in the creek's hum, in the wind behind the walls. She is not gone. She is around, above, but mostly beneath. If you find this place, do not dig. Do not answer when she calls. The letter was archived, unverified, but everything about it felt like truth. In 2003, the Missouri Department of Natural Resources conducted a LIDAR terrain scan of the Ridge Hollow region. Their aim was environmental, erosion control, nothing else. But the scan revealed something no one expected. A pattern, not geological, not random. A series of concentric depressions, perfect circles, all radiating from a single elevation. The same elevation where the Whitlock house once stood. Geologists dismissed it, but folklorists didn't, because the spiral wasn't new. It had been in Eliza's writing, in carvings, in the roots. Now it was in the ground itself. In 2011, independent filmmaker Lyle Walker received a small grant to produce a series called Liminal Folklore of the American South. His second episode was to focus on Ridge Hollow and the Whitlock case. He rented a cabin 5 miles from the site, began shooting interviews, collecting archival records. But 10 days into production, he vanished. No body was found. Just a single boot print, mid-stride, like Eliza's trail. In 2015, researchers in environmental psychology coined a new term, cognitive geography. The theory suggests that land is not neutral. It participates in memory. Certain locations absorb emotional residue, encode trauma, and in rare cases, shape perception. In this light, Eliza's disappearance becomes more than a mystery. It becomes a collapse of a boundary, of perception, of time. She didn't vanish. She was absorbed. In 2012, 2 hikers near Ridge Hollow reported hearing a lullaby in the fog. They were alone. In 2016, a teenager vanished filming a school project called Echoes of Eliza. His phone was found days later, playing a looped video of static and a woman's voice whispering, "Not gone, still beneath." In 2020, a prospector mapping mineral veins near the spring wrote this in his logbook. No formal investigation followed. But these are not isolated. They are echoes. In 2023, the University of Missouri launched the Memory Archive Project, a digital repository for folklore and residual trauma in rural regions. The Whitlock case became a central node. Subjects were shown the name Eliza Whitlock. They had never heard of her before. Lead researcher, Dr. Isabel Mearns eventually withdrew from the project. Her final note reads, "In fringe circles, a theory gained traction. Eliza didn't vanish in 1912. She is vanishing, always. A moment not locked in time, but recurring, across decades, across perception. Sightings in 1943, a note in 1981, a voice in 2020. All the same disappearance, echoed forward, backward. The boy dreams a day not yet come. The trees are wrong, he says, like they forgot how to stand. Linear time breaks. The spiral does not. The spiral recurs, in stone, in ink, in topography. Spirals in folklore mark cycles, descent, inward movement that never resolves. Roots, symbols of buried memory, twisting beneath, reaching, remembering. Perhaps Eliza wasn't taken. She was drawn into the spiral, into recursion, into memory encoded not on paper, but on soil. A woman vanished from a locked house without footprints. A voice called from the woods before she left. A note appeared weeks later. He opened the hill. I am underneath. And the land has not stopped echoing. This is no longer a case. It's a condition, a moment in time that continues to happen. Eliza Whitlock's disappearance is not unique. It follows a structure far older than she was. A woman hears something only she can hear. She walks into the trees. The village hears her voice in the well. These stories are everywhere, different names, different details. But the bones remain the same. These are not accidents. They are archetypes, recurring, recursive. And now, Eliza has joined them. Or worse, she always was one. In Ozark geography, a hollow is a natural valley, a dip between ridges. But in folklore, it becomes something else. A place between, not quite land, not quite sky, a thinning. Do not tarry where the land has memory. Where the hollow weeps, time forgets. In 1911, less than a year before Eliza vanished, a single line was found written in the county record margins. There's something in the hill that calls. The women hear it first. Maybe it didn't start with Eliza. Maybe she was just the first who answered. In many hollow stories, the woman returns, but changed. She knows names, but not faces. She speaks from behind herself. One tale from 1894, a woman came back after 7 days. She looked the same, but every time she smiled, her eyes didn't. In her final journal entries, Eliza writes, "I forget what the mirror shows. I know the shape, but not the self. The woods walk now. Not me. I stay. They move, not disappearance, but slippage. Not death, but transformation." In Ozark folklore, there were ways to stop the vanishing, old methods, rooted in fear. John Whitlock, after the disappearance, was seen hammering every window shut. He buried an axe head beneath the kitchen floor. When asked why, he said, "So she don't drift further." But it didn't work. The deeper we go, the more time itself begins to bend. Witnesses describe impossible shifts. "I went to the spring at dusk, came back at a hospital. It was morning. Heard her crying last night, but that wasn't last night. That was last year." The spiral isn't metaphor, it's mechanism. A structure that doesn't move forward, it folds in. We are not recounting a sequence. We are circling a center we cannot reach. A growing theory. Eliza did not disappear. She became a mirror. Not reflective in glass, but in perception. She reflects the fears, the memories, the selves of those who come too close. I looked into the glass and saw not myself, but a room with no door. Someone stood inside. She wore my face. Each time I look, her expression changes. She is learning me. To see her is to see yourself, rewritten. Science cannot explain the root spiral. Psychology cannot classify the dreams. Folklore cannot contain the scope. But still, the story persists. It demands to be told, and each retelling becomes part of it. We are no longer documenting. We are participating. Those who investigate the Whitlock case often report a shift in perception. They don't feel like observers anymore. They feel included. I dreamed of her before I knew her name. She looked at me from the mirror, but I wasn't there. I heard knocking. No door nearby, just trees. To know her is to be near her. To speak her name is to risk becoming part of the spiral. In Ozark speech, there is a phrase, "the silence beneath." Not silence as absence, but silence as presence. The hush beneath the spring, the breath beneath the house, the echo beneath the name, where names dissolve, where time forgets, where Eliza waits or echoes. In ordinary history, a person vanishes. We mourn, we remember, time moves on. But Eliza did not vanish. She multiplied. She persists, not in flesh, but in pattern. She is the story, the echo, the shape in the bramble. A folklorist once wrote, "She is no longer just remembered. She is remembering." Modern mapping systems continue to detect anomalies near the former Whitlock site. Infrared scans show a perfect circular drop in ambient temperature, consistent, unchanging. Seismographs detect rhythmic, shallow tremors, not geological, not seismic, but something closer to breath. He refused to return to the site after reviewing the footage. Over the last 25 years, more voices have emerged. Quiet, hesitant, The trees moved, but there was no wind. I saw her standing in the creek. Her feet didn't ripple the water. Footsteps in the snow, and then nothing. I felt seen, not watched, seen. Most chilling, multiple witnesses report hearing the same phrase. Say her name. Not from a person, not from any direction, but from the space itself. What if Eliza Whitlock's story is not a sequence, but a space? A terrain made of memory, a location that thinks. Each footprint not a path, but a scar. To step into Ridge Hollow is to step into her memory, but memory is not passive. It wants to be remembered back. Viewed mythologically, Eliza's disappearance is less a tragedy and more a rite. In many cultures, rituals mark passage between worlds. But Eliza did not return. Or if she did, she wasn't Eliza anymore. She was the land's answer to the question it was never asked. Philosopher Marianne Thorne called it epistemic dread, the fear not of what we don't know, but of what we are not meant to know. The Whitlock case doesn't resist answers, it erodes them. It punishes the act of explanation. Every theory collapses inward. The spiral doesn't solve, it consumes. In 2019, a journal surfaced during an estate sale in Boone County. Unmarked, unsigned, but consistent with John Whitlock's known handwriting. It describes dreams, hearings, a woman becoming not with the land, but of it. I saw her at the tree again. She wasn't standing or walking. She was becoming. The bark her skin, the knots her eyes. She whispered, "Tell them I am the door." Before it could be authenticated, the journal disappeared again. Can a story like Eliza's be contained, explained, archived? Each retelling fractures. Each new voice becomes part of the loop. She has outlived explanation. She resists closure. She continues. 2021, County Archive Clerk reports knocking from inside sealed vault. 2022, baby born in Carter County. First word, Eliza. 2023, drone survey loses GPS over the ridge. Footage recovered. 7 shots. Same figure in white, standing in different places. Same face. The case is no longer a case. It is a condition, a recurrence, a voice that answers when silence falls. By the 1990s, the story of Eliza Whitlock had spread far beyond Missouri, not just through podcasts or documentaries, but through something stranger. 1994 folk ballad titled Whispering Hollow includes the lyric, "She stepped into silence, and the silence stepped back." 2003 oil painting Root Woman by outsider artist Emma Claves, faceless figure growing from tree bark. 2010 art installation Whitlock's Eye, a mirrored room where a whisper plays, but only when the viewer is silent. None of the artists knew each other. Some had never heard her name. I dreamt the shape. I woke up, and my hands were already sketching. If a myth persists through memory, what happens when it creates new memory? Not passed down, but grown. Is it still myth? Or has it become presence? In the early 2000s, Eliza's story began appearing online, not in archives, but in forums. No one cited a source. No one claimed to own the story, but it spread. Reddit thread titled, "Have you heard of the Hollow Woman?" Then mysteriously deleted. But something stranger began happening. Viewers reported whispers and clips that hadn't been edited. Browsers crashed when trying to access Ridge Hollow records. An alternate reality game launched in 2021, Under the Leaves. A reversed audio file. "I didn't leave. He opened the door." The game was shut down after players reported recurring dreams. All the same room, all the same voice. Psychologists refer to the phenomenon as shared haunting, a narrative so symbolically potent, it embeds itself into subconscious architecture. The Eliza story functions like a mnemonic virus. Once heard, it enters the psyche. People don't remember hearing it. They just begin to dream her. Some say it's trauma processing. Others call it contagion, but it doesn't explain the anomalies, the images, the voices, the knockings. Those remain unaccounted for. By the 2010s, Eliza's archetype had entered speculative fiction under many names. Each variation shares core traits, different names, different authors, but the same echo, as if the story isn't being retold, but remembering itself. 51. Philosophy of a haunting idea. Philosophers of myth call it a threshold concept, an idea that haunts the thinker, that shifts the thinker by resisting containment. Kafka described it as a door always open, but never entered. We don't fear what happened to Eliza. We fear that what happened to her is happening to us. That place, memory, and perception are no longer separate. That to know her name is to be named in return. In 2022, a visual artist developed a generative spiral route algorithm for a digital art exhibit. Over time, the program distorted. New symbols emerged. Layers glitched. I remember you. The artist swore they never programmed it. The exhibit was shut down. But the question lingers: who remembered who? In fringe spiritual communities, Eliza has become a symbol, not of death, but of crossing. Small groups have formed rituals, offerings of salt at old trees, silent circles walked at dusk. Some call it performance art. Others call it quiet faith. Either way, belief is a spiral. Each telling brings us closer. Each step retraces the path. We say her name. We follow the ridge. We hear the voice. But there is no center. Only the curve. Only the downward pull. The spiral does not end. It waits. In 1987, local historian Peter Gaines claimed to receive an unmarked cassette. No return address, just 2 words. She speaks. The tape begins with silence, then breath, then a voice. And do not follow the path. It curves inward. It loops behind your breath. Bye. He showed me the door beneath the field. The hill opened. I saw roots like veins. Gaines kept the tape hidden for decades. Upon his death, it was donated to a private archive. It has since gone missing. No voice match, no tape anomalies, no explanation. Only fragments remain. But what survives speaks. In 2018, several folklorists received an email from an anonymous account. Attached was a scanned letter, encrypted using a variant of the Visionaire cipher. Eliza is not a name, it is a gate, a point of thinning, a mouth that forgets how to close. She is not lost. She is still happening. The handwriting matches no known sample. But the syntax, the phrasing, matches Eliza's journal entries almost exactly. Coincidence? Or echo? In 2020, a Forest Service drone surveying erosion patterns over Ridge Hollow captured something unexpected. A figure, standing just at the tree line, unmoving, pale. When the drone moved closer, the figure vanished. No movement, no blur, just gone. That's not her, one resident said. She's not the woman anymore. She's the land, wearing her face. May 2023, a woman named Corinne Jules filed a report with the Carter County Historical Society. She claimed she had seen Eliza. Not a ghost, not a shadow, a person. She was barefoot, wearing a dress like in old photos. She wasn't walking. She was floating through grass like it remembered her. She looked at me, direct, like I was late. She said, "You shouldn't be here, not when the roots are blooming." Then she turned and was gone. Corinne passed a lie detector. 3 weeks later, her dog was found dead, curled into a spiral. No wounds, no prints. The spiral returns, not as graffiti, not as viral trend, but as arrival. Each time, no person is seen nearby, but each time, the symbol is discovered by someone who already knows her name, not summoned by belief, but answered by memory. The ridge hasn't changed. The house is gone, but the pattern remains. No animals nest near the old root chamber. No homes are built on the site. Satellite imagery shows heat shadows, rhythmic pulses. Not evidence, but impression. As if the land is holding a breath. It never intends to exhale. Only one page from Eliza's journal remains unpublished. It is held in a private collection. It reads, "I will become what watches." The spiral is not trap, but mirror. To vanish is not to end. It is to be remembered wrongly. The meaning is debated. But one folklorist said simply, "It's not about death, it's about substitution." Eliza didn't die. Something else started living in her shape. So where is Eliza Whitlock? Answer, she is not where. She is when. She is how. She is every silence between explanations. She is the cold in the breath before confession. She is the voice that speaks last in the room. And most of all, she is the spiral that waits beneath your memory. You have known her all along, haven't you?